Good evening, everybody. The question of the evening: who is actually running the Department of Justice? The DOJ and the FBI continue to act as though they are above and beyond our laws, trampling citizen rights that they're sworn to protect and defend, conducting raids against whistleblowers, questioning a former Trump administration official without legal counsel present. And there is as well the not minor matter of the never-ending witch hunt against President Trump. And what about the corrupt system and the outrageous treatment of former National Security Advisor General Mike Flynn? This is what the president had to say about all that.
It's a terrible system we have. It's going on right now with General Flynn. The FBI said he didn't lie, but Mueller said he did lie. So they took a man who's a general and a respected person and a nice man, and they convinced him he did lie, and he made some kind of a deal. And now they're recommending no time. You know why? Because they're embarrassed that they got caught.
We take up what can be done about the crisis at the Department of Justice and the FBI. Attorneys Greg Jarrett and Cleta Mitchell join us here tonight. And the red storm rising in this hemisphere as both China and Russia are committed to encroachment in what has been historically and geographically America's region of influence: North, Central, and South America, the Caribbean. President Trump's national security team looking to enunciate policy and strategy to blunt Chinese influence in Africa while ignoring the adventurism and the expansionary ambitions of both China and Russia in this hemisphere. China telecom company ZTE now employing former Senator Joe Lieberman to lead a PR campaign in Washington to temper fears within D.C. that ZTE poses a national security threat. Concerned? ZTE is controlled by the communist regime that is pursuing its public goals of global domination. And there's another giant Chinese technology company, Huawei, the Chinese retaliating for the arrest of Huawei's CFO, Ming Wanzhou, by detaining two Canadian nationals. Secretary of State Pompeo today demanding China release them.
The unlawful detention of two Canadian citizens is unacceptable. They ought to be returned. The United States has stood for that, whether they're our citizens or citizens of other countries. We ask all nations of the world to treat other citizens properly, and the detention of these Canadian citizens in China ought to end. We have lots of complicated issues going on with China today all around the world. And we work on each of those to get good outcomes for the people of the United States of America and respecting the rule of law each step along the way.
And joining us tonight to take up China's expansionary foreign policy and what it means for the West and the United States in particular, Daily Caller Editor-in-Chief Christopher Bedford and radio host Mark Simone join us. Also, Congress heading home for the weekend as a government shutdown looms, all because House rhinos and radical Dems refuse to fund the border wall President Trump promised to build. Political savant, the dean of political strategist, Ed Rollins, with us. We take up the prospect of a government shutdown, the likelihood that President Trump's director of the OMB might just become his permanent White House chief of staff. Our top story tonight: the Department of Justice and the FBI acting as though they're not only above the law, but have no intention of being held accountable. The special counsel's office today declared to a federal judge that the FBI's behavior in questioning National Security Advisor Michael Flynn without giving him legal representation or the opportunity for such representation in January of last year did not cause him to make false statements. Former FBI Director James Comey over the weekend suggesting he took advantage of a young administration by placing General Flynn in a perjury trap.
You look at this White House now, and it's hard to imagine two FBI agents ending up in the same room. How did that happen?
I sent them. Something I probably wouldn't have done or maybe gotten away with in a more organized investigation, a more organized administration, in the George W. Bush administration, for example, or the Obama administration. In both of those administrations, there was process. And so if the FBI wanted to send agents into the White House itself to interview a senior official, you would work through the White House counsel, and there'd be discussions and approvals and who would be there. And I thought, it's early enough, let's just send a couple guys over.
There is a man who thinks he's quite cute. That much is certainly obvious. For what is not obvious, we have with us Greg Jarrett and Cleta Mitchell to sort it all out. The outrageous actions of the DOJ certainly not limited to the ever-expanding Mueller witch hunt. Just last month, 16 FBI agents raided the home of a protected Department of Justice whistleblower who had delivered documents pertaining to the Clinton Foundation and Uranium One to a government watchdog. It was Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein who boldly suggested he wear a wire to record the president and suggested invoking the 25th Amendment to remove the president from office. The text messages exhibiting flagrant anti-Trump bias exchanged between Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. Thousands of texts between the two wiped clean by the Mueller witch hunt before turning their phones over to the DOJ Inspector General. And of course, the disgraced former FBI Director Comey, who orchestrated the leak of the memos he took of his meetings with President Trump to the media, and of course, who sent over those two investigators from the FBI to the White House. Joining me now, attorney, former member of the Oklahoma House of Representatives, Cleta Mitchell, Greg Jarrett, Fox Business legal analyst, author of the New York Times bestseller, The Russia Hoax. Good to have you both here. Cleta, let's start first with what seems to me to be an admission by the FBI director that he was not following either law or procedure or observing the rights of General Flynn when he sent over, as he cutely put it, a couple of FBI agents to the White House.
Well, that's exactly right. But let's talk about why were they over there in the first place? Why were they going to interview him? Well, they were interviewing him because the Obama administration had unmasked his conversations. Now, this is the incoming National Security Director whose job is going to be to communicate with foreign leaders. Right. And during the transition, that's what he was doing. The Obama administration recorded those and gave the transcripts of those conversations to the FBI. The FBI reads those conversations, and the conversation with Russian Ambassador Kislyak, and then they see an article, an interview with General Flynn in the Washington Post, in which he said in the article that he did not discuss the Russia sanctions issue with the Russian ambassador. They say, oh, we've seen the transcript. That's not telling the truth. And that's when they came up with this idea to go and see if he would tell them the same thing. Now, my question is, number one, why is the FBI reading the transcripts of his conversations? Why did the Obama administration unmask those conversations? And why did Jim Comey and it was Peter Strzok who went over and just was going to shoot the breeze with General Flynn, and then try to get him to say to them what he'd said to the Washington Post, which he did.
Well,
so
they had already
totally
said in those texts between themselves that they were looking for an insurance policy, and Strzok in particular had forsworn his dying opposition. He was one of the early members of the resistance to the Trump administration, working under the colors of the FBI. Greg, your thoughts?
Well, these are the court documents today, and they are rich with evidence of corruption on the part of the FBI and to some extent the Department of Justice. They admit in the 302 document that the FBI agents
and the 302
well, the 302 is a summary by the FBI of an interview. They admit that Flynn told the truth. So the question that Judge Emmett Sullivan should have on Tuesday is, Mr. Mueller, why are you prosecuting? Why did you charge a guy who your own agents interviewed and determined told the truth? And then I think if I were the judge, I would turn to General Flynn and say, General Flynn, why did you plead guilty to something you didn't do? Were you coerced? Was your son threatened by these special counsel operators over here at the other table?
How about why did the FBI director acknowledge, as he acknowledges, send over 2 agents thwarting what is policy, procedure,
Right.
And the legal demand for representation for a formal interview. It wasn't just a little trek across town to the White House.
Well, you called Comey cute. I'd call him cunning and corrupt, and also a liar. This is
cute as Texas for all.
Yeah, I mean, this document here shows that he deceived the acting attorney general and didn't tell her about what he was doing with the interview with Flynn until it was too late. And then when she found out about it, she was angry. This is in the documents today. Comey deserved to be fired 100 times over for 100 acts of misfeasance and malfeasance. But the important point that Cleta is making here, there was no legal basis for the FBI to even interview Michael Flynn. It's not a crime to talk to the Russian ambassador during a transition.
I want to follow up with Cleta, where you took us back to the beginning, and that is the surveillance of the White House staff, the incoming administration, and in particular, General Flynn. There's been no accountability. No one has been held to account in the Obama administration for what was clearly an unprecedented surveillance of political opposition and the succeeding candidate in a presidential election. This is outrageous, and you don't see it anywhere in the Washington Post, the New York Times, CBS News, NBC News.
No.
This is outrageous.
It's completely outrageous, but here's what you did see in the New York Times and the Washington Post and all of those places. Remember when President Trump said back during the spring of 2017, when he told the American people, in part based on what Devin Nunes had learned and
the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee.
That's right. And remember, the left went crazy, and he had to step aside for a few months while there was an ethics investigation because Devin Nunes told the truth. He was ultimately exonerated. But remember,
I think there's another
President
issue
Trump
in that
said.
as well. The House leadership
remember when the
was
president
absolutely
said,
aligned with those Democrats.
But remember when the president said to the American people that his campaign had been under surveillance by the Obama administration.
Been wiretapped
and
was his
all
word.
of those newspapers, the headlines, go back and look at it.
Oh,
It said
I can
they
remember
laughed at
now
him.
the mockery, the snark
They
in their
mocked
tone.
him. They said, with no evidence, the president says without evidence that his campaign was under surveillance. Honestly, you ought to Google sometime how many times there are headlines that quote the president, and then in the headline or the first paragraph it says without evidence, without any facts.
Yeah.
They dispute what he says the moment it comes out of his mouth.
And this president has been fighting this battle alone. And I think every American needs to understand that. Not with the assistance, the support, the help, the strategic assistance and thoughts of either the leaders of either the House or the Senate.
Right.
This president fighting alone. And it's time that change.
Well, and he's fighting individuals in his own department now as well who want to hide the evidence and obstruct Congress. I wish the president would declassify.
Wait a minute, what do you mean, and obstruct Congress?
Well, Rod Rosenstein is refusing to hand over documents to Congress. For example, in here, the FBI agent with Peter Strzok, they are redacting his name. We know who he is, Joe Pitenka.
I mean, and obstruct Congress.
Well, Rod Rosenstein is refusing to hand over documents to Congress. For example, in here, the FBI agent with Peter Strzok, they are redacting his name. We know who he is, Joe Pitenka. And Rosenstein refuses to allow that individual to testify before Congress.
We've known this throughout. We've known this throughout. This president knows it. He is the one who wanted to fire Rosenstein. He is the one who chose not to.
Right.
For his own reasons. He is the one who has chosen, Cleta, not to release those documents, those FISA documents that are at the foundation of much that is going on. We'll have to figure.
Yes, but
we'll have to figure out the
remember-
rest of that. I'm sorry, Cleta, we're out of time.
Okay.
Thank you
Okay,
both.
sorry.
Appreciate it,
My
Greg,
pleasure.
Cleta.
All right. Thanks.
And we're coming right back. Stay with us.
The border wall battle heating up.
As the fight for funding rages on, what will it take to get the $5 billion? Answers on Trish Regan Primetime.
Breaking news now. President Trump has named Mick Mulvaney as acting White House Chief of Staff. Mulvaney, of course, budget director. He's director of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau as well. President Trump saying Mulvaney has done a, quote, outstanding job in his administration, and indeed he has done so. The United States facing a potential government shutdown if the rhinos and radical Dems refuse to fund the president's border wall, and Congress leaving town for the weekend if they've not already left in total. The Senate is in recess until Monday, the House in recess till Wednesday, so there's no potential deal on the table. Fox News Capitol Hill producer Chad Pergam reporting chances are pretty high the government will be shut down. Joining us now, former Reagan White House political director, Fox Business political analyst, Ed Rollins. Ed.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Chad Pergam here, he thinks that because of the timing, the Congress out until Wednesday, the odds are very high that on the 21st, the government will shut down.
Well, my sense is the Democrats and the Republicans may go along with it, trying to continue a resolution or something. If the president hangs tough, it makes the wall his demand, as he has said all the way through he's going to do that. It may very well get shut down. But my sense is there's not much stomach among any of the gutless wonders on the Hill, new and old, to do anything like that.
But these gutless wonders have done it before, and I don't know why there would be any different outcome.
Well, they don't like shutting the government down. They all feel they pay a price when that occurs. So,
but they don't mind not working.
Well, they don't. You can see that. That's obvious.
I want to turn to first Mick Mulvaney.
Fabulous choice.
I was going to ask you what you think
Fabulous
of him, and how many jobs can one man hold simultaneously, though?
The bottom line is he better tell his wife and his kids he'll see them in 2 years or 4 years. The great part about him is he knows the government, he knows the Congress. He's the perfect choice. He walks in there, he knows what this president needs. There's no disruptive. He just changes his place at the table, and I think it'll be a very smooth operation. And clearly, he can make it happen for the president. The problem bringing someone other in is they try and change things or they alter things. Mm-hmm. The dynamics are very effective at this point in time. And the critical thing is the government still has to run through all this crisis stuff, and he can make it happen.
You know, I have to say, as the fake news was swirling around the chief of staff choice on the part of the president, my heart sank several times in the midst of all of that, not least of which was when Mulvaney started making noises about rather going to Treasury or to Commerce, at least according to some accounts. I haven't talked to him about that. But I think he's a man who I think if he really wants the job, I hope he takes it because he would serve the president.
Well, I think he'll perform at a very able level. My sense is they're making it acting because he is a cabinet Senate-approved OMB director, and so
OMB is not the simplest of all the departments.
It is a complicated job, and particularly now with the new budget coming forward. Again, he's going to have to. I hope he gets by on 4 hours sleep a night because that's what the kind of schedule is. But I think the key thing is he knows what the president needs. There's no disruptive force. The president can focus on all the chaos that's going on around him.
Yeah, Mulvaney has served this president quietly, so effectively. He's a bright, hard-working conservative. I don't think the president could find better.
And knows the Congress, and obviously knows the other side of the Congress, which is now going to be in the House, particularly is going to be the Democrats. So he can give the president good guidance.
Yeah, he's had to put up with a few of them over the years.
Yes, he has.
We're going to take a quick. I want to get in one more question here, and that is on what Greg and Cleta and I were talking about, and that is this persecution of the president. The obvious. Let's listen to, if we may, the former fired FBI director, still fired former FBI director, talk about his remarks about how he sent agents over to the White House to interview General Flynn. Get your thoughts on it.
I sent them. Something I probably wouldn't have done or maybe gotten away with in a more organized investigation, a more organized administration, in the George W. Bush administration, for example, or the Obama administration.
That's shades of J. Edgar Hoover, and obviously
I think the man ought to be in jail.
Well, the reality is any good White House would have had a counsel who would have been in that room. We had Fred Fielding when I was in the White House, who was a veteran of Watergate and one of the great lawyers, who would have basically said, thank you very much, you deal with me, I make a decision who you see and who you don't see, and that's the way it goes.
And for him to pursue this, to surveil this president, this presidential candidate under the Obama administration, and not to be held, and there seems to be no thought of holding him accountable.
I think this was a continuation of the Brennan and all the bad guys that were there before.
Well, we know it is.
And I think from his perspective, he thought he could get something on them and maybe get a favor here to guarantee his future.
Yeah.
But it's outrageous and it's criminal.
Ed Rollins,
thank you.
Great to see you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Be sure to vote in our poll tonight. And the question is, should Congress remain in session throughout the holidays until they reach an agreement to fund President Trump's border wall? The president could do that. He could say, get over here. Cast your vote on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Follow me on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Like me on Facebook. Follow me on Instagram at Lou Dobbs tonight. Up next, creatures of the swamp come to the aid of communist Chinese company ZTE. Why? Who? We'll take all of it up and more right after the break. Christopher Bedford, Mark Simone join us. We'll be right back. China's agreed to a 90-day suspension of its retaliatory tariff hikes on $126 billion of U.S. cars, trucks, and auto parts. That's effective January 1st, a victory for President Trump and his balanced trade policies. The president making the announcement on Twitter, tweeting this: China just announced their economy is growing much slower than anticipated because of our trade war with them. They've just suspended U.S. tariff hikes. U.S. is doing very well. China wants to make a big and very comprehensive deal. It could happen, and rather soon. Chinese telecom giant ZTE has hired former U.S. Senator, former Democratic nominee for vice president on the Gore-Lieberman ticket to conduct a national security assessment of its products. Lieberman, putting ZTE's financial interest over the national security of the United States, says he'll register as a lobbyist for the company. He's already met with a number of lawmakers on Capitol Hill who oppose any kind of deal with ZTE, and this is an extraordinary development and a sad one for Senator Lieberman. Secretary of State Pompeo today meeting with Canadian Foreign Minister Chrystia Freeland, in which he called on China to release 2 citizens of Canada seized in China. Pompeo called China's actions in detaining them unlawful. China detaining those Canadians earlier this week in retaliation for the arrest of Huawei's chief financial officer. Joining us now, Daily Caller News Foundation Editor-in-Chief Christopher Bedford, WOR radio personality Mark Simone. Good to have you both here. Let me start, Christopher, since you're so far away there in the swamp. The idea of Lieberman representing ZTE, what's next? Huawei, what does he take, where does he go from here?
The entire saga of how the U.S. has dealt with ZTE outside of Congress has been pretty disappointing for the last few months. ZTE was basically in a death grip in the United States where they weren't allowed to import the things that they needed to use to build their products. And we've done
They're fully dependent on the United States for its technology. Period.
They are. And as part of a trade deal, actually, President Trump said he was going to work with Xi Jinping to undo that ban and allow them some breathing room. He said that there are too many jobs at stake. Right. So they've come back, and now they've enlisted an independent hawk, Lieberman, formerly a Democratic presidential nominee, Lieberman, to come here to Washington to lobby for them. The entire thing stinks, and a couple of senators who are much more hawkish, like Senator Graham and Senator Rubio, I expect to hear some noise from them on Monday on this.
Yeah, one would hope, and the administration, in putting that ban together, Mark, they made it very clear that they were a problem, and the president, at the request of President Xi, thinking that this would help in a deal both for North Korea and the trade deal, he acceded to saving 90,000 Chinese jobs.
Yeah. Now, Joe Lieberman, you know, a nice guy. His lifelong passion has been Chinese telecom. That's all he ever talked about.
You bet.
I don't know why they waited a month. They could have hired Paul Ryan for this, but
yeah, well, it would have been a real. I guess they were the two, Paul Ryan and Joe Lieberman. It would have been somewhat low energy, as the president would say.
but it's just terrible. And these guys are like Hertz cars. You can rent them whenever you need them, and it's just awful. The swamp at its worst.
You know, Ed Brolin said to me, talking about Lieberman, because that this is going to be his legacy, and that's a shame, because Lieberman worked. I mean, he has much more that he should be repairing to than taking up the interest of ZTE and the People's Liberation Army. People are no longer under any illusion about who the Communist Chinese are, what Beijing represents, and its intent on world domination as it steals by the hundreds of billions of dollars from us each year, not to mention the trade deficits that we run for 30 years.
Absolutely. I mean, these Chinese companies, their executives may wear business suits, but they're essentially proxies for their government, especially involved in spying, involved in breaking U.S. sanctions in Iran, in North Korea, and slapping anyone on the wrist when they get caught. To them, it's kind of a game, but the game is global domination. And for Lieberman, who's got a long, proud career in service to the United States and the Senate, and has crossed the aisle multiple times, who worked very closely with Senator McCain, for him to do this now, I am surprised. He would have been somebody who I would have thought of more as a statesman than a moneymaker, and maybe he'll change his mind when he sees the reaction that people are having to this.
Yeah, I would think so. I would hope so. You get the last word on the Mueller witch hunt. What a mess it is.
You said it before. Comey should be in jail. J. Edgar Hoover would be embarrassed watching this guy. Before Congress, he couldn't answer 240 questions. Should send a chill down the spine of every American. 2 days later, 92nd Street Y, amnesia gone. He answered everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Mark, thanks so much. Christopher, thank you. Thank you both. Appreciate it. Up next, the delusional radical Dems refuse to budge on funding the president's border wall. They blame President Trump for their inaction.
The only reason there would be a shutdown is if the president's throwing a temper tantrum, saying he wants less security rather than more.
This wall makes no sense, and the only person who wants it's the president. And quite frankly, he's not going to get it.
I want to be crystal clear. There will be no additional appropriations to pay for the border wall. It's done.
We should not be wasting $5 billion, or in fact a lot more than that, which is what Trump eventually wants, on a wall.
I don't envision any circumstance where we allocate $5 billion or anything even close to that, because it will be a waste of taxpayer dollars.
The president should accept reality and basically bend to the will of the American people and hash out a deal that allows for the government to continue to be funded.
Well, actually, they should bend to the will of the American people who elected this president, who promised to build that wall. And those are the globalist elites posing as radical Dems there. What clever people they are. What clever people. We'll take that up with Diamond and Silk. They join us right after the break. Stay with us. We'll be right back. On Wall Street today, stocks closing lower. All three major indexes falling into correction territory for the first time since March of 2016. A big sell-off on the street. The Dow down almost 500 points. The S&P lost 51 points. The Nasdaq down 160. Volume on the big board, 4 billion shares. The Dow and S&P down more than 1% on the week. The Nasdaq down nearly 1%. Crude oil down more than 2.5%, down to $51 a barrel again. Gold losing nearly 0.5%. Silver down nearly 1.5%. Copper down almost 0.5%. And a reminder to the Federal Reserve, these arrows are not flashing inflation and the necessity for interest rate hikes, just as the president has mentioned from time to time. A reminder to listen to my reports 3 times a day on the Salem Radio Network. The new DHS numbers show over the past fiscal year, the U.S. deported more than 250,000 illegal immigrants. Of those total deportations, more than 145,000 of them convicted criminals, 23,000 criminal charges pending. Joining me now, social media superstars, the president's most loyal supporters, Diamond and Silk, hosts of the Fox Nation show, Diamond and Silk. Where did you get that name for the Fox Nation show, Diamond and Silk?
Well, they just said called it.
That's what they called it.
Diamond and Silk.
It's great to see you guys.
Oh, thank you for having us.
And congratulations on the new Fox Nation show, and
Thank you.
Much success.
Thank you.
Let's start with this, the likelihood in the minds of some that the president will shut down the government because this Paul Ryan and the folks in the House don't want to fund a border wall.
Well, he should. He should, because we sent Congress to do a job. They work for us. We don't work for them.
That's funny, because I heard all of those Democrats saying that we should bend to their will. They tried to say it was the people's will they wanted to bow to, but it's them. We elected a president who said he's going to build a wall.
That's what he's intending to do. So they need to fund the wall.
That's right.
Because Americans want protection. That's what we want.
That's
security.
right.
Did Chuck Schumer seem just a little arrogant, a little elitist, in a very global way, of course, when he said it isn't going to happen this wall?
And he was playing politics. But see, we don't have time for that.
That's right.
I'm glad that the American get to see this play out. The American people get to see this play out in the opening. Now you see who's really working for you. You see that you put these people in office and they haven't done not one thing, haven't pushed one piece of legislation for the American people.
That's right.
So these are the people that you need to vote out. Why do you keep voting for a Chuck Schumer or a Nancy Pelosi
That's right.
if they're not going to work for the will and for the American people?
And not to mention, our tax dollars pay their salary. They are the government. They're supposed to work for we the American people. And if they can't go and do the job, then we need to shut it down.
Shut it down.
Period.
Well, we're going to find out pretty quick. And Paul Ryan has organized this so that the House has to stay away till Wednesday evening. It's going to be the first time they'll be able to take a vote. It's going to be a very close thing. You don't suppose Paul Ryan would intentionally do that, trying to stop the president's wall? I just can't imagine.
Yes, it's called the deep state snakes. That's exactly what it's called.
Well, let's turn very quickly, if we could, to the witch hunt, because it's going on and getting worse by the day, it seems to me. Your thoughts?
Well, you know what? I see prosecutorial misconduct, overreach, and it's so sad that you're trying to take down a sitting president, trying to smear him for what? And then I look at us, we, the American people. What does that say for us? What if the FBI agency come out we, the American people, and we don't have money to fight that? Private citizens.
Yes.
How do you fight that? How do you combat that? This looks like vigilante justice is what they're trying to achieve. We're going to go after this here. It's just making up stuff to go after us. 16 FBI agents raiding the home of a protected Department of Justice whistleblower.
That's a gangster move right there. That's what the mafia do. And that's what I see the FBI, I see our government being deemed as that by the way that they are acting and treating people. How are you going in search of a crime? You're going in search of a crime because there is no crime.
Right.
Okay? There was no crime in the first place for this Mueller investigation to even be over with the Russia and the Trump and the election collusion. The one that colluded this election right here is the Hillary Clinton camp, the DNC, the FBI, and I can keep going on and on and on. Look, that's who colluded this and interfered in this election right here.
And I couldn't agree with you more. And it's always great to see you. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having us.
The American way will prevail.
All right.
Truth, justice for all.
For all.
All right. Thanks so much. Diamond and Silk. Great
Thank you for having
us.
Up next, more signs of trouble in the European Union. France preparing for another weekend of protests, demonstrations, and very likely much worse. We'll have that and a lot more right after the break. Pastor Robert Jeffress joins us tonight. We're coming right back. Stay with us. Breaking news now. French police are preparing for what will be a fifth straight weekend of probably violent protests and demonstrations on the streets of Paris. French authorities are preparing to deploy armored vehicles, security personnel to quell any violence that arises. President Emmanuel Macron saying, quote, "Our country needs calm, it needs order, it needs to function normally again." What is normal in France these days is probably what they don't need. Joining me now, Robert Jeffress, pastor of the First Baptist Church of Dallas, Fox Business contributor, author of Choosing the Extraordinary Life. We recommend the book to you highly, as do we Pastor Jeffress himself. Good to have you with us, my friend. Let's start.
Thank you, Lou.
Let's start with the president. And I've mentioned it once or twice tonight. This president basically is fighting the Mueller witch hunt. And all of the armies of angry Democrats that are raising their heads in the Southern District of New York, whether it's in Manhattan, whether it's in Albany, when Letitia James, the Attorney General-elect, arrives, promising to persecute the president. He has exhibited in the first 2 years and the times in which I've talked with him, not 1 ounce of anything but absolute energy and strength to repel these, I'm going to call them what they are, dishonest fools who are going after him.
Well, that's right, Lou, and I had the opportunity to be with him yesterday, and first of all, he told me specifically to give his best to the great Lou Dobbs.
Well,
he absolutely loves this program, as we all do. But you know, Lou, I'd heard the reports.
I think everybody
I'm
does.
sure you've heard
the whole country.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've heard those reports. I'd heard them that the president was isolated and depressed and fearful of impeachment. When I was with him yesterday, he was nothing of those things. He was upbeat, he was positive, but he was also very adamant that he had done nothing that rises to the level of an impeachable offense. And Lou, he understands what's going on here. The Democrats are trying to undo the 2016 election. They couldn't win at the ballot box, so what they're doing is engaging in a program that will result in either impeachment from office or harassment while he's in office.
What is
it? And they're not going to succeed in this.
No, I don't believe they are either. As a matter of fact, I believe what will be revealed here is the depth of corruption that exists within our government that would permit such a prosecution. To see one Democrat after another, these radical Dems are rising up. In U.S. attorneys' offices, DA offices, attorney general offices, with only one purpose, and that is to harass this president. And it's ignorance.
That's right.
It is dangerous. And what is astonishing to me is the lack of, if you will, just a massive public outrage, whether it be just on the right, just conservatives or not. This has got to be stopped, and it's got to be stopped now, because these people, these radical Dems, are acting against the interest of the country. They're being un-American, and it is very dangerous when you are contending with the threats posed by China, with Russia, Iran, ISIS, you name it. It's all happening at once.
It isn't. Could I share this? Because he authorized me to say this tonight. Sure. He does not regret at all firing James Comey. He said if he had not fired James Comey, it would not have revealed the corruption at the FBI with Peter Strzok and Lisa Page and the whole group. And look, the American people are getting wise to this. You know. And the good news is, I mean, this week a Fox poll showed that he was exactly at the same approval rating that Obama had at this time in his presidency, and Obama didn't have the relentless attack of the media. Well, Rasmussen has him at 50%, and evangelicals are supporting him at 77%.
And the Fox News poll has his approval rating at 46%. And among Republicans, President Trump, his job approval is 88%. It is astonishing. And for his poll numbers, his approval numbers, to be at the same level as Obama, think about this, and as you said it, I mean, he's under constant attack by the left-wing national media. President Obama was being glorified, lionized, and put to bed with a pillow under his head every night by the national left-wing media. It was quite an inverse relationship between the two on the part of the national media. This is a time for this country to understand better who we've put in government, and they should be very, very uncomfortable to think about what has happened here. We had the Obama administration responsible for surveilling a presidential candidate and his staff, his officials, and a sitting president. That's astonishing.
But this president is doing great, Lou. He's fulfilling his promises every day. And I think we all want to say thank you to you, Lou, for getting the truth out every night of what's really going on here.
That's very kind of you. We know two quick thank yous that rank much farther and beyond that, and that is, of course, the President of the United States and the good Lord. Pastor?
That's right.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it. Good to see you.
Thank you, Lou.
Pastor Robert Jeffress. Up next, the United States government ignores Russian and Chinese encroachment in this hemisphere. We'll have more on that. We're coming right back.